Family recipes have a way of ending up everywhere. Some are handwritten on index cards, others are clipped from magazines, printed from websites, or tucked into old recipe boxes. They may not look organized, but many of them hold memories that are worth preserving. ReciScan was created to make it easier to turn all of those scattered recipes into a real cookbook without having to retype everything by hand. With ReciScan, you can scan recipes, organize them into chapters, customize the design, and order a professionally printed cookbook right from the app. In this video, I'm going to build one from the beginning and show you all the major features along the way. We'll start by opening the ReciScan app and creating a new cookbook. I'll enter the book's title, subtitle, and author name. I'm also going to create our first chapter, Appetizers, and select a color interior since I plan to include photos throughout the book. You can come back and change most of these settings later, so you don't need to have the entire cookbook planned before you begin. For our first recipe, I'm using this printed recipe for No Fuss fruit pie. It includes both the recipe text and a picture, so it gives us a good example of what ReciScan can capture from a single page. From inside the cookbook, I'll select New Recipe, choose a scan option, and assign the recipe to the Appetizers chapter. You can always move recipes between chapters later. I'll take a clear picture of the entire page. After the image is captured, ReciScan asks whether I want to use the image as a recipe photo. It also asks whether the recipe has any additional pages. This one only uses a single page, so I can tell ReciScan to begin processing it right away. Once ReciScan finishes reading the image, the new recipe appears in the chapter with a new indicator beside it. Before moving on, it's always a good idea to open the recipe and review what was captured. ReciScan has separated everything into a consistent format, including recipe name, servings, personal note, ingredients, and instructions. Even though the original recipes may all look completely different, the finished cookbook pages will have a clean, uniform appearance. Also add a separate photo of the finished dish. Since I don't have a picture of this dish, I'm going to use my phone's camera to capture one from the clipping. To add it, I'll return to the recipe, open the recipe options, select Edit, and choose Add Photo. Recipe photos need to be cropped to a 4:3 shape for use in the printed cookbook. ReciScan includes a cropping screen that lets you choose exactly which part of the image will appear on the page. Once everything looks right, I'll save the recipe. Next, let's add a handwritten recipe card for spinach and mushroom pizza. Before scanning it, I'll add a new chapter called Dinners from the Edit Book screen. Keeping recipes organized as you go makes the cookbook easier to manage, especially once it starts getting larger. For this recipe, I'm going to use the picture of the handwritten card itself as the image on the recipe page. That can be a nice way to preserve the original handwriting while still presenting the ingredients and instructions in an easy-to-read format. I'll open the finished recipe and make sure the title, ingredients, and instructions are captured correctly. Everything looks good, so we can move on. Here's another printed clipping for Italian mushrooms. The scanning process is the same, even though the layout of the recipe is different from the others. I'll add the picture from the clipping as the recipe photo. And crop it for the cookbook page. Recipes don't have to come from paper. For this next example, I'm going to find grilled cheese on a public website. From the browser, I can share the webpage directly to ReciScan. The app will analyze the page, identify the actual recipe, and ignore all the advertisements, navigation, and other unrelated content. This saves you from having to copy and paste each ingredient and instruction individually. Recipes imported from outside the cookbook initially appear in the unused recipe section. Once imported, the website recipe looks just like any other recipe in ReciScan. The source may be different, but the final cookbook page still uses the same organized format. Now I'll move through a few more recipes to start filling out the cookbook. Once you get into a rhythm, adding recipes with ReciScan can go surprisingly quickly. Cursive handwriting is supported too. Old handwritten cards often contain more than just ingredients. The handwriting itself may remind you of a parent, a grandparent, or other family member. ReciScan lets you preserve that original image while also creating a clean, readable recipe page. The strawberry pretzel salad recipe continues on to a second page. Instead of creating two separate recipes, we can use ReciScan's multi-page scanning feature. When the app asks whether there are more pages, I'll select Yes and capture the additional image. ReciScan will process the pages together and combine the information into a single recipe. Now that the cookbook is growing, I'll add chapters for breakfasts, lunches, and desserts. The chapters can be put in any order, so I'll rearrange them to the sequence that I want readers to see in the finished book. When a cookbook contains a lot of recipes, making changes one at a time can become tedious. You can long press a recipe to reveal a selection box. Choose multiple recipes and then use the selected actions to update them together. If you decide that a recipe doesn't belong in the cookbook, you have a couple of choices. You can permanently delete it, or you can keep it in ReciScan and simply remove it from the current cookbook. Keeping it may be helpful if you think you'll use it in another book later. You can also add a chapter opener when you want to introduce a section with a story, dedication, family member, or other information. Chapter openers can include a title, text, and an image. You'll also have font and color control similar to the other design options in the app. ReciScan can add a preface and about the author page at the beginning of the cookbook. Each page has a built-in layout where you can add an image, enter your text, and adjust the font, color, and image border style. Preface is a good place to explain why the cookbook was created and share some family history. The About the Author page can introduce the person, family, organization, or group behind the book. You can also customize the appearance of the recipe pages. There are separate settings for recipe names, headings, body text, personal notes, and other title elements. As you make changes, a preview at the bottom of the screen shows how the selected fonts and colors will work together. I recommend keeping readability as a priority, especially if the cookbook will be used regularly in the kitchen. Recipe photos have several layout options. Next, I'll choose a cover for the book. ReciScan includes several ready-made cover templates that can be customized with your title and book information. For this example, I'm using the modern blue design. I'll also add a short description for the back cover. This could explain what the book contains, tell the story behind the collection, or include a message to the person receiving it. Subscribers can also upload their own images and create a completely custom cover. When adding the front cover image, ReciScan automatically places the title text over it, or you can create the text manually in the cover designer. I'll select the part of the image that I want to use on the front cover. It's important to start with a high-resolution image since small or blurry pictures may not reproduce well on printed 6x9 cookbooks. Inside the cover designer, I can change the wording, font, size, and color of the title. The text button lets me add additional text elements and position them anywhere on the cover. This text is a little difficult to read against the background image. I'm going to place a translucent black box behind it, lower the box's opacity, and move it behind the text layer. This keeps the image visible while giving the lettering enough contrast. I'll use the same general process for the back cover, adding and positioning the elements until everything feels balanced. There are currently 4 binding types available for ReciScan 6x9-inch cookbooks. First is paperback saddle stitch, which is stapled booklet style intended for smaller books. Paperback perfect bound uses a traditional glued spine and looks similar to many paperback books you would find in a store. Hardcover case wrap provides a durable hardcover with the design printed directly onto it. Paperback coil bound uses a spiral style binding that allows the cookbook to lie flat while you're cooking. Here are a few examples of books printed with different bindings and cover templates. This one is saddle stitch. In this example, there are no photos, but all the interiors can use the same options. This one is the perfect bound paperback. It happens to be the cover that we're experimenting with in our example cookbook. The case wrap hardcover binding. Again, no photos in this example, but it's definitely an available option. Now we're into a few examples of the coil binding. And a few more of the coil bound examples with our available templates. The coil bound format is especially practical in the kitchen because the pages stay open without needing to be held down. This fundraiser cookbook uses the larger half-page recipe photo layout, which works especially well when you have a strong picture of the finished dishes. It also includes custom pages that were used for sponsor acknowledgments and coupons. Now, let's see how our custom design looks on the 3D book preview. This gives us a much better sense of how the front, back, and binding will work together. I'll switch our book to a hardcover so we can see how the spine affects the design. The gear icon beside the binding option opens the spine settings. Here you can adjust the spine's font, text color, and background color. The available text size is determined automatically by the thickness of the book. Books with fewer pages may not have enough space for spine text at all. That's why it's important to check the 3D preview carefully before placing the order. You don't have to finish the entire cookbook before getting something useful from ReciScan. An individual recipe can be turned into a printable PDF that you can print at home and add to a binder. The printed version can also include a QR code containing an ingredient list. That code can make it easier to move the ingredients to any compatible grocery or shopping app like Instacart. If someone has invited you to contribute to their cookbook, they may give you a cookbook share code. Open one of your recipes, select the recipe options, and choose Share. Then select Send to Cookbook. Enter the project's share code along with your name, and the recipe will be sent to the cookbook organizer, who can review before adding it to their book. You can also share a recipe code for an individual recipe. A recipe code is different from a cookbook share code. Anyone who receives a recipe code can use it to import that recipe into their own ReciScan collection. You can share the code by itself or create an image or video that includes the recipe name, photo, and the code along with it. The video format works particularly well for sharing recipes on platforms such as Instagram and TikTok. To import a recipe that someone has shared with you, open your cookbook, Select New Recipe and choose the Code option. Enter the code from the shared image, video, or message, and ReciScan will add that recipe and photo and notes to your cookbook. Cookbook organizers have two primary ways to collect recipes. ReciScan users can submit recipes using the cookbook's share code. People who don't use the app can submit through a special website where they can type in the recipe and add a photo. Recipes submitted through either method will appear in the organizer's Unused Recipes section. The organizer can then review each submission and assign it to the correct book and chapter. Once the content and design are ready, we can generate the printable book. If the cookbook contains a lot of pages or high-resolution photos, assembling the preview may take a couple of minutes. After the preview is created, ReciScan provides an estimated printing price. The price is based on factors such as page count, binding type, quantity, and whether the interior uses color or black and white. Shipping and taxes are calculated later during checkout. The interior preview shows the actual file that will be sent to the printer. Review every page carefully. Check the table of contents, chapter order, recipe text, photographs, blank pages, and page breaks. The printer will reproduce the file as it appears here, so this is the best time to catch anything that needs to be changed. After checking the interior, I'll review the cover using the 3D preview. For this version, we're using the free modern blue cover with saddle stitch binding. The model can be rotated and you can pinch or zoom to inspect the design more closely. Check that the binding is correct and that the front cover, back cover, and spine text are positioned safely. A cookbook can represent a lot of time and irreplaceable family material. It is a good idea to create a backup periodically instead of relying on a single copy of the project. ReciScan saves the backup file to your device. From there, you can move it to the cloud or a computer or another safe location using the sharing tools available on your phone or tablet. When everything is ready, select Order My Cookbook from the Preview and Print section. I'll enter the number of copies I want and provide the shipping address. ReciScan will then calculate the final cost, including the printing, taxes, shipping, and handling. Depending on the destination, several shipping speeds may be available. Keep in mind that shipping begins after the books have been manufactured. The exact production time can vary, but it's reasonable to allow approximately 10 to 14 days from ordering until the book arrives. After confirming the shipping information, I'll continue to payment. The available payment methods depend on the device and location, but may include credit card, debit card, Apple Pay, or Google Pay. Once payment is complete, the book will be submitted for printing. And that's the complete process. From a box of handwritten and printed recipes to an organized, professionally printed cookbook. Whether you're preserving family recipes, creating a gift, organizing a fundraiser, or building a collection of your own favorites, ReciScan is designed to make the project manageable from beginning to end. Thanks for watching, and I hope this gives you some ideas for the cookbook project you're about to work on.